Just want to give a little PSA if you're watching this interview. The first 10 minutes of this, my camera is choppy. I did not realize it because during the recording, had no idea. I saw it in the post as I was editing. Sorry about that, but audio is okay. And then after like the 12-minute mark, everything's crystal clear the rest of the way. I appreciate Coach McKillop coming on. I can't wait to have him back on down the road. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Man to Man. Coach, I can't thank you enough. You're going into year 3 at Davidson. I appreciate you so much coming on.
Well, Jordan, I'm always happy to chat, and I'm used to seeing you on the basketball court working together during the summers during camp. It's good to see you on across the computer screen too.
Yeah, it's nice. I feel like I'm on a virtual recruiting visit right now at Davidson.
Yeah, we've had plenty of those.
Now, I give Jack Gibbs credit and shit basically about him being an Ohio guy. He loves to tell people he's from Ohio, but honestly, Coach, when I was doing research for this, I got to give you the crown for the Ohio guy. He recruited Jack Gibbs and Peyton Aldridge and a couple others, third and fourth all-time leading scorers in Davidson history.
Yeah, so we've had some success with a lot of players from Ohio, and hopefully we'll continue to have success with players from Ohio. And we're currently going through the fall recruiting period, and we're excited with the interest that we have from some players who hopefully will be at Davidson, and one who's actually decided to come to Davidson. So the short version of it is I became an assistant coach, and everybody tries to find their niche and what they can, the area that they can really focus on and get to know the coaches there. And at the time that I started coaching here at Davidson, I started dating a girl who's now my wife, and she was from Columbus, Ohio. She attended Davidson. And around the same time, there were two good players from the same high school that she went to. One's name is Carter, and one's name is Brian Sullivan. And we recruited them a little bit. They both went to different schools, but then Brian Sullivan ultimately decided to transfer. And I ended up getting a call from my wife's the neighbor of where her parents lives, who was Brian's doctor, and said, "Hey, Brian Sullivan has decided he's transferring. I just wanted to let you guys know he's always seemed like a great fit for Davidson." So that was kind of the first way that we got an Ohio player here. But at the same time, if I went to visit her family in Ohio as trying to be a good boyfriend, and obviously she's my wife, Kelsey, and I wanted to do everything I could to make her seem like I was the right guy for her. I was always open to going back to Ohio to see her family, and as I would do that, I would do some recruiting, and that's really how I first met Jack Gibbs, or first had eyes on Jack Gibbs. And the Ohio basketball community is pretty small. I mean, it's a really talented state of athletes. Football is king there, but everybody in their basketball circle knows each other. And Brian Sullivan had such respect from everybody in the state of Ohio. Jack Gibbs was the Gatorade State Player of the Year. So much respect from everybody, coaches, other players in the state of Ohio. He's still talked about. We'll talk to recruits, and they'll be like, "My dad told me all about Jack Gibbs." And then we had Peyton Aldridge, and we had Jordan Barham, and some other really good players from Ohio. So it's funny. We've had a lot of players come from overseas. We've had a lot of international players. We've also had a lot of players from Ohio. And interestingly enough, now we have a couple players from Boston. So I don't know. Yeah. And Chicago. So there's always these little pockets that we can find where we can pull some recruits from, where they see someone coming from the similar background, similar school system, similar I think high school basketball in Ohio is coached really well, similar styles. They see someone else having success and fitting in well, it'll help us maybe get the next one.
Now, I want to stay with Gibbs for a little bit. I know he's going to give me crap after this, but with his recruiting process, you mentioned that Gatorade Player of the Year in Ohio his junior year, but senior year he tore his ACL. As you hear stories all the time from like former players that like they had a devastating senior year injury, scholarship gets pulled. What made you guys stick with the guy that was going to come in and he had a season-ending injury very early his senior year?
Yeah, so it was actually his junior year he tore his ACL.
Oh, sorry.
But I was at the game. I went to Ohio. I stayed at my in-laws, and I actually went with, there was a Davidson alum who I mentioned my wife and Brian Sullivan went to the same high school at the time. My wife was there. The principal of the high school was a former Davidson basketball player. So he and I went to watch the game, and I think it was the first quarter, maybe early second quarter. Jack had a breakaway, and it was one of those non-contact type steps he took, and then he went down, and you could tell it wasn't good. Um, I believe we'd offered him already at that point, but we also knew how good he was, and he would have been that kid that we were going to recruit and recruit and recruit, and at any point we would expect, because of his talent level, that Ohio State or a Big East school or a Big Ten school would maybe be very interested in Jack, and would not have been surprising. And um, I don't know. It'd be Jack could better answer this, but maybe the schools who hadn't offered him at the time, they were like, we don't want to. We weren't quite there yet. We're not going to move in that direction ever. And maybe some of the schools that had offered him chose not to be as invested, but we were really invested in him. And part of the reason is we'd had players at Davidson who'd had those injuries and they bounced back and had success, but we also knew his talent level and his attitude, and we stuck with him. And he saw the Ohio guys from Davidson have success. He came and visited, and it seemed like a match made in heaven. And his senior year, he was healthy. He was healthy. He was big. He ended up getting in college shape as a freshman, but he was playing. He was like a big bowling ball out there, but he was still getting 25 points a game, it seemed. You can find those highlights on YouTube. They're pretty funny, and he looked pretty funny. But yeah, he had a great senior year, and we knew what we were getting. And it's cool. Jack didn't start as a freshman. I was actually looking at his stats the other day we have a recruit that I was, or maybe even I can't remember if I was speaking with a recruiter or a freshman about, just the challenges of what it takes to compete at the college level, and the stepping stones you'll have year after year. But I think Jack, we played 3 Power 5 teams that year: Virginia, Carolina, and maybe Duke. And Jack, I think he scored 0 points in all 3 of those games against Power 5 schools. And he was productive in other games. And he had, in the last game of our season, we actually lost in the Southern Conference tournament. There was a foul on Jack in overtime, I remember the play. I don't believe it should have been a foul call, but we trusted Jack at the end of the year to be on the court guarding the other team's best player as a freshman on maybe the biggest possession of the season. We had to win that possession. We unfortunately didn't, and it wasn't because Jack wasn't a good defender. So Jack's got an incredible story, from the injury he had in high school to in today's landscape. If you're not starting as a freshman, that maybe changes your feelings about your future. And then I think as a sophomore, Jack averaged 17 points a game, and he was all Atlantic 10 for the first of 3 years. You said third leading scorer in Davidson history. Second,
I think he's fourth. I think he's third, and then Jack's fourth.
Yeah. So, and I appreciate you sharing my statistics, but wherever I was when I graduated, I think I was like second, maybe, or third on 3-point shooting list. I just get lower and lower and lower because we keep having these kids from Ohio that just beat all my 3-point shooting numbers.
Well, I looked up your bio on Davidson and said you're top 10 in all 3. It was 7, 9, and 7. So you're still top 10. So you got to give yourself some credit. 39%. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is I think the best percentage I shot was my freshman year. And I always wondered why. And I think as a freshman, you're really not thinking. You took those shots in high school and you had ultimate confidence. And then, as you learn the system and you maybe have to figure out your position and figure out your role, sometimes you think a little bit too much. And that's something that I've really kept in mind as a coach. And we haven't shot the ball great the last 2 years, so I don't think I'm doing as good a job as I need to with that. But, if you're thinking about good shot versus bad shot, the likelihood of you shooting that with confidence compared to, hey, I've made this shot 100 times, I know I can knock it down, I think that makes a difference.
Yeah, I actually want to stay on that real quick with you playing. Like, everybody plays for their dad growing up and play for high school and stuff. You being being a guard with your dad being the head coach in college, like, take me through that. How was that experience?
It was challenging, but it had some incredible moments. I went through the recruiting process. I had a chance to go to Colgate and Davidson. Those were the really 2 Division I options that I had. And I went on a visit to Colgate and I loved it. And it was almost like I was sick to my stomach leaving Colgate, like, oh no, this might be the right place for me. And I liked having another option than Davidson, which I thought I was going to go to, but now I think this place is pretty special. And then I went, it was late February, early March, maybe, when I took that visit. And then Davidson won the Southern Conference tournament in 2002, and they advanced and they played Ohio State in the first round of the NCAA tournament in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I went out for that game with my family to watch. And like, I saw that environment, and it came down to the final minute. I think we lost by 4 points, but I think we cut the lead to 2.
Mm.
No, I'm sorry. We had a chance to make it a 1-possession game with like 40 seconds left, 30 seconds left, and missed a layup. And I remember thinking, like, I want to do that, and I want to do it here in terms of I want to be on the team that helps Davidson win that game in the NCAA tournament and getting back to that stage. So then it became an easy decision for me. And one thing that really helped me was obviously I grew up in Davidson. I went away to prep school in New Jersey for a year, but I still had connections with the team. And when I was in town, I would play with our players. I would play with the players, many of whom became my teammates. And I think I earned their respect. And that was never my goal, I'm going to be teammates with these guys one day. I've got to work hard to prove it to them now. But they kind of welcomed me in when they needed another guy for pickup. I played, and they saw me in the gym working. So I don't think it was surprising for them when I became a member of the team. I think they were excited because they'd known me and we'd had that relationship. But that was a big thing, was I had those relationships with the players on the team. It wasn't the coach's son coming to play for Davidson. It was the guy that we know and we've played with and we have respect for, whose father is our coach. At least I believe that.
Yeah.
I had a great group. I think we had 6 newcomers that year, maybe 5. And they were a great group of guys that I'm still closest friends with to this day. And obviously became good enough friends with them that they didn't think twice about that, or maybe they did. But it was challenging because I knew this, and I know my father very well. And I knew him even as an 18, 19-year-old, that what he was going to be like. But he made it like pretty clear, like from the first minute of the first workout of that freshman year, that he was going to be very, very hard on me and make sure everybody in the gym knew that I was not going to get any extra benefits. And that had its challenges, but what it did is it got the best out of me. I had questions as a high school kid if I could play at the Division I level, and I believe I had a modest career, but I was really proud of what I did as a college player. But I don't think I could have ever accomplished what I did at the college level anywhere else because I don't think anybody would have pushed me the way my father did. And maybe he did it for reasons beyond just pushing me. Maybe he did it to help everybody on the team, allow us to be better as a group. But ultimately, it allowed me to be on that 3-point list, and I don't think I could have done that anywhere else for any other coach.
Yeah, that's awesome. It really is an awesome story that you played for your dad, and now you're year 3 of taking over a program that your dad stepped down, retired. How was that transition for you guys? Because like behind closed doors, like in his last season, was he just saying like this is it, or was it kind of catch you off guard at the end of the season after everything settled?
So there was discussions throughout that year and really that previous summer, but it was always. Again, I know my dad, like he ain't going to give this up at any point. I could see him doing this 10, 15 more years. And we had a really good season, and we had a very old veteran group, really talented. And I think Steph Curry's era and the Elite Eight team that we had, I think is the best Davidson team since the Lefty Drizel era when we made the Elite Eight. I think back-to-back years. But as far as top to bottom talent, that was the best team Davidson maybe has had since the Steph Curry time. And I remember sitting in the hotel with my wife and my mother and I think my sister, my brother-in-law, after losing to Michigan State. And he didn't have this attitude or this tone of a guy, having just lost, talking about that game against Michigan State as if it were his last game. And I remember walking back to the hotel with my wife, like, well, I think he's got a few more years in him. And then as we went through the spring, and it was really that first portal spring that is kind of what's become the norm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it probably wore down a little bit, and it kind of foreshadowed the direction of college basketball, which I heard Nick Saban talk about this past weekend, is like the type of coach he always wanted to be. He couldn't really be that guy anymore. I'm not speaking for my father, but I know that he got the most out of his players, but it was never as easy as the players wanted it to be. And it's really difficult to coach like that right now. So whether it was for whatever reasons it may have been for, I think he stepped away at the perfect time. I mean, obviously he went out on top, but also I think where we are right now, he's probably in some ways fortunate to be sitting on the sideline, because being who he wanted to be, and which is what he did for so many years as a Davidson head coach, that would have been a challenge for him.
Yeah.
Being true to himself.
Yeah, and so talk about Saban. I mean, your dad retired. Him and Coach K retired basically the same time, and then Roy Williams was the year before, and Jay Wright was around there as well. So it's just like college basketball overnight almost lost the icons of the game to retirement, and so now it's the young guns like you and Shire taking over these programs. But it's awesome, and I do have a follow up to that. Is like, what separates you and him, coaching style, coaching wise?
I think it's a better question for our players and some of our assistant coaches. Man, that's a tough one. One of the parts of my transition from assistant to head coach was I'd recruited many of the players that were on the team, and I had a different relationship with them as an assistant coach than my father did as a head coach. And I can't remember who said it. I'm sure everybody says it, but I remember hearing like if you are dishonest or phony with players, they will see through you at the first moment. And okay, I've got this great relationship with Grant Huffman and Ricky Gadini and Sam Menenga and some of our other guys that were returning and played for us. And I couldn't all of a sudden try to be somebody different just because my title is different and my role as head coach is different than maybe my role as an assistant coach. So I think Sam had an incredible year for us. I think Grant Huffman grew to be what should have been an all-league player. He should have been an all-conference player last year. He just wasn't voted on it, although I believe he should have been. Ricky Gadini's really developed here, Davidson. I just happen to mention those three guys, but those are three great examples. But maybe they did because of the way I was able to coach them, because of how close we were. And I know I coached them a very different way than my father did when my father coached them, and probably how my father would have coached them had he remained the head coach and these guys had grown older in his system. So I think, he's a very hard-nosed, old-school kind of guy, but he's also incredibly tender at the right times, and he knows how to have those behind-the-scenes, closed-door meetings with players to really, help them take those next steps and build the confidence they need. I think I'm a little bit more tame, maybe not the right word, but I don't think you walk in the gym and people would walk in the gym and they would see my father and be like, they'd be on edge where they were going to get yelled at or they were going to be sitting in the wrong spot. And I don't think people walk in the gym and see me in the same way as that, but I think they see a lot of energy. I think they see hopefully a lot of teaching and communicating with guys that are just as eager to learn and hopefully excited to be in the gym. So, but maybe ask Jack Gibbs. He's had a different perspective.
Yeah, it's I can speak to that a little bit when I watch you guys work out when your dad was a head coach to you. I was like, when I fold out that chair, I'm like, please don't squeak too loud because I don't want to cause any ruckus in this gym. But he's always been great to me too. But
you think about that. You think like maybe that level of heightened awareness or I don't want to use the word fear, but like you're so trying to do the right thing. Maybe that builds the habit of doing the right thing all the time. Yeah. But the flip side, and not that I really think like, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? I'm just being who I am. The flip side is, well, maybe you're not thinking so much about being perfect that you're making a quick decision or you're making the play that you feel comfortable doing. So I think certain guys are better one way and certain guys are better the other way. I think I was probably better when I had somebody making sure every single moment I was being challenged to get it right, be perfect, and execute with the level of detail. I think there are some guys that need needed to be a little bit different to maximize their abilities. So I try to be, in some ways, the coach he was in how he teaches and held guys accountable. But I also have to be true to who I am, and I want to believe that that's going to help our team continue to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he has an all-time line. I think it was your press conference being named the head coach about what makes you guys different. And he said you're more analytics and he's more of a gut feeling. And he said that analytics to him was like a bikini. It shows a lot, but doesn't show everything.
Yeah, I've heard that line for like 20 years. So
of course,
everybody got a laugh out of that. And I was like, you guys haven't heard that before? I would say I got a lot of questions about my interest in analytics after that press conference, which was really funny because like I probably am as into analytics as most coaches right now. I I'm not, crunching numbers every day. I'm on some of the analytics websites, especially during our season, but
Mhm.
I'm no like, I'm not changing our practice based on some numbers. I'm not changing our style. Some things we'll do differently just out of, common
For
sense, but
sure.
also seeing the numbers. But he was so like non-analytics that to me, I was like the analytics guy.
Yeah.
So it's all relative. I don't think people quite understood just as how relative that was to. Yeah, I think I focus on analytics, but I think everybody in basketball is doing that now, except for that guy right there who only followed his gut, but he had enough success to show that his gut was pretty darn good when called upon.
Yeah, it's like in football where the old head coach would punt on 4th and 2 at the 40-yard line, and you're coming in, and you're like we need to probably go for that. So it's like you're not doing so far analytically to where you're outdoing yourself. It's just you feel more comfortable doing other things.
Yeah,
So
and really, we use analytics to teach, and we use analytics to scout, and we use analytics to help define roles. Um, I think you think of like a 2-for-1 situation. That's a pretty obvious analytic situation, and fouling at certain times of game that's maybe a little unorthodox. That's caught some media attention over the years when teams have done that,
yeah,
and I think those are you got to be all in on being that type of coach or staff and program, and we are all in on being intelligent, but with making sure we're looking at numbers all the time to try to be doing the right things and try to be getting better at the right things. But we're not one of those that there's a playbook and we do that no matter what. We go off our gut. I
yeah.
think a bit more.
Well, to speak on that, Coach, about your guys, we got to talk about your guys too. Last year, you guys just seemed like you had bad luck the last 2 minutes of games. I mean, 10 of your losses were by 5 or less. I mean, if just conservatively you go 5-5, you have a 20-win season. It just bad bounces happens. But this year, you returned 4 out of 5 starters, which is phenomenal in this day and age of basketball because of the transfer portal, people leaving early, whatever. How are you guys feeling with returning 4 of 5 starters?
Really excited. Each of those four guys, that would be Connor Kachera, Bobby Durkin, Reed Bailey, and Sean Logan, each of those four guys have really, really improved, as you'd expect. But we see it daily, and it, like you'll see a guy over and over and over again, and then you don't quite grasp how much better they're getting at certain things. But our guys are getting our attention, like by doing things that they couldn't do last season, they couldn't do back in May. You mentioned those close losses, so I think a little bit of it was bad luck. I think a lot of it was we were 323rd in the nation in 3-point shooting, and we're Steph Curry University, and we're shooting at that level. I think that's something we've addressed with our off-season work. I think we've recruited some really good shooters, and I
Mhm.
think we have guys that shot the ball very well in spurts that were maybe younger, and their experience that they have will allow them to be a lot more consistent. And you think if you're 323rd in the country in 3-point percentage, and you're having 10 games, you said 10, 9 or 10,
10.
10. Because I know we led the nation in games lost by 5 points or less, and we led the nation in games decided by 5 points or less. And you make one of those threes, maybe you're just 123rd, not 323rd in 3-point shooting. That's maybe 5 points a game. That's at least 3 points a game. And if we just made shots and shot the ball better, that's a huge difference. But we are with Davidson does not have graduate school, and that has its challenge, that presents its challenges. But I think it has a lot of positives because we get to recruit kids and be honest with them and say, like, you're going to have an opportunity to play early in your career here at Davidson that you're not maybe going to get at schools where you sign with them in November, and all of a sudden in March they're bringing in 2 transfers at your position that are 21, 22, 23 years old. So I like that because we've had such success at Davidson with developing players, and when freshmen and sophomores are learning from juniors and seniors, and those juniors and seniors are all conference caliber players like Jack Gibbs and Brian Sullivan and Peyton Aldridge, 3 guys we mentioned earlier. That's how you build a program. And we took our lumps last year because we had 1 senior, and you mentioned we had 4 starters returning. The one that's not returning is Grant Huffman, and he graduated. He was a senior. We had another senior who broke his foot in January, David Skogman, who graduated as well, didn't play after January, and he was our best 3-point shooter. I think he was shooting 47% from 3 when he got hurt. So not only did we struggle, but we lost our best shooter. And I mentioned this to our team in our meeting that, and we have this kind of story that we talk about a lot. It's a motivational boxing story, but we had the ability to take hit after hit after hit and stay in the center ring and keep fighting and keep fighting and keep fighting. But when we got that last minute, that last play, we just didn't have that knockout punch. And 10 times we were right there to that last second, and we lost in a draw. But I think this year we have that knockout punch. We have returning guys that have gotten better and better and better. And we have newcomers, both freshmen and 2 transfers, that they have the ability to throw that knockout punch. So we're excited with what we brought back, and we're excited with what we've added in terms of talent. But we're really excited with how we've worked this summer to get better as a team.
Yeah, I mean, I can vouch for that too. From what I saw this summer workouts, like when I talked to Reed too, when I saw Reed come back in, like he really has a pep in his step, like confidence wise. And that's the key. Sean too. Sean Logan's proved to me that he's finding that confidence. And I think, like, obviously last year you never want your starter to go down, but with that comes this year where Sean had that invaluable experience to where, look, he was top 5 in block percentage in the country last year as a freshman or as a sophomore. But
as a sophomore, but he's 19,
yeah,
so he was probably the age of every other freshman in the country. Yeah, Sean he's young for his grade. Like Reed Bailey was his freshman roommate, and Reed Bailey's like 18 months older than Sean Logan. And Sean arrived at Davidson very skinny, and I'm sure some people may still think he's skinny, but I think he's added over 30 pounds since he arrived at Davidson. I think he's added 15 to 20 since 12 months ago. And he's playing, and you noticed it this summer, he's playing with a little bit of a different edge to him offensively. Like defensively, he's always been pretty spectacular for us. And that's why our defense last year was statistically as good as any defense, better than any Davidson team we've had since joining the Atlantic 10 years ago. But from an offensive standpoint, he's so comfortable now with the ball in his hands. He knows how to help his teammates. He knows how to move within our offense, but he's also finishing around the rim. I'm sure because of the work he's put in addition to the strength that he's added and the weight that he's added. So there were times this summer where he looked like the best player in the gym, and maybe you were there on one of those days or two.
Yeah. Look, it's always nice to see when it starts clicking for guys, especially a guy like Sean. So I'm pulling for him, and I have stock in all those guys. I'm very biased, but it is what it is. Like, I really love what I've seen with those guys. And the portal pieces, I mean, I can attest, like, get the D2 shooter. You get Joe from Colorado.
And Joe Hurlburt from Colorado. And you said Zach's a shooter, and I'm glad you did, because he shot 40% from 3 in his college career. But he's like a maniac, and I mean that in all the ways you, as a coach, you hope your player is a maniac. He's a maniac with his work ethic. Mm-hmm. I mean, I walked in the gym, and he was doing yoga in the gym. Maybe he was just stretching, but to me it looked like yoga. As I walked in here about an hour ago, and it's 8:30 in the morning, and he's doing yoga in our gym, and that's not surprising at all. He's probably went from yoga to go to his laptop and pull up one of our games from last year to see how we played or what we look like offensively, defensively. But he is an unbelievable competitor, and he's incredibly physical. But he's also really unselfish, and he's unselfish like off the ball as a cutter and a screener, and he's really unselfish with the ball. He'll get to the rim, and he'll make an incredible pass to an open teammate, and it's like, you could have just scored. And he's like, I know, but I want to make the right play. Like, the right play is often you scoring the basketball. But to have a mentality like that with the body of work he has underneath him is impressive. And that's why we're really excited that he's here. And Joe Hurlburt, you mentioned, transferred from Colorado, and Colorado had 3 NBA draft picks this past year. So he was in the gym with some studs. Yeah. And he competed against them every day, and he can really shoot the basketball. And you probably saw that. That's probably the one thing that will jump out at people. He's also very, like I mentioned, Sean being very comfortable with the ball in his hands. That's something that he's gotten better at and better at. Joe, like, naturally, he knows how to play basketball. He knows how to pass. He knows how to move the ball. He knows how to screen. He's just got a really good IQ on the offensive end of the game.
Yeah, I like Joe a lot. He can shoot it. And, I mean, he was behind Eddie Lampkin, too, who's also
300 pounds and 6th year of college basketball. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of shooters, I'm going to pivot, because if I'm talking about Davidson with you and I don't bring up Steph Curry, then my friends would be mad at me. That was the first thing people were asking me about was Steph. But for like when you're recruiting Steph, like what were your selling points at Davidson at the time? Because obviously he made, or for people outside looking in, they think of Steph Curry, they think of Davidson. What made you guys sell Davidson so hard?
So my timeline was I was a senior in college when Steph was a senior in high school. So I was not a part of the recruiting process like face to face, but like I remember Del Curry and Steph Curry walking around campus and saying, "Hey, we got a recruit coming by," and I was like, "Oh my God, that's Del Curry coming! That's the DC for three, whatever they used to say at the Hornets games." And it was like the Bojangles commercial when I was a kid growing up. So I was fired up that Del was on campus. But I know they sold an opportunity. My senior year, we had 7 seniors. They sold an opportunity to play. They had a path of sons of former NBA players, former pro players, former college players that had great success at Davidson. The education was huge for Steph and for their family. I think the proximity to home was a big part of it. And I think he had all these people that were doubting him and questioning him. And my father and the staff had like ultimate confidence in what they believed he would do at the college level, and he would do at Davidson. So I think it was a number of those things. And he spoke a lot of like his interviews, they go viral every month. Like, so I think this was actually like from a year or two ago, but it popped up again this summer. And it was from that Hot Ones, I think it's called, that where the guy interviews as they're eating hot wings and they have like the heat goes higher and higher. And very eloquently, while like burning his tongue off, the question was, do you think if you would have gone to a different school or if you would have transferred to a school, do you think you'd be where you are right now? And he talked about how he quickly had success in the NBA because the style they played with the Warriors was a style that he played in at Davidson that was built here at Davidson that my father built. He had an opportunity to contribute right away, to not just succeed, but to also make mistakes and learn without having to make a mistake and then be relegated to the bench. Mm-hmm. And I think when you hear something like that, it's something you want to send to every one of your recruits. Like, you can accomplish everything at Davidson that the coach at the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 school in the country can tell you. And there's going to be an opportunity here that's going to help you get better. It's going to play in a system that's going to prepare you to play at whatever level that may be, because we believe that we teach the game and not just teach skills. We teach how to play at a pretty high level. And we made sure we set that clip, even though it went viral again, I don't know, on TikTok or something, to a lot of the people that we were recruiting who were making those decisions. And hey, look what the exposure you can get here. Look at the development you could get here. And now we're in the Atlantic 10, where there's even more of that than the Southern Conference when Steph played. So so it's a wonderful story on so many levels. And aside from the recruiting aspect, I mean, when everybody watched that Olympic game, I went to church the next day and I'm getting high fives on Sunday after winning gold medal. I mean, when Steph does something well, everybody in this town celebrates, and everybody around the world thinks about Davidson.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's a small world too, that we talk about. You saw Del Curry when you're like on campus. Well, Sonia's brother is actually now the AD at Ferrum, where I went, but he was the offensive defensive coordinator when I was in school. And so Del and Sonia would come to football games Saturday, and I'm like, oh my God, that's Del Curry. And then sometimes Steph Curry would be there. So I get that being struck on campus. But one of my favorite stories that your dad said about Curry, when you're talking about he come in, make mistakes, and not get benched, was he said it a million times. I know you've heard it, but his first 2 games basically in a Davidson uniform as a freshman, he had 15 points and 13 turnovers at Eastern Michigan and just played him through it. And then the next day was the next game against Michigan. He had 32 points and 3 turnovers. And that just speaks to what you said is, hey, you come in, you make mistakes, we're not going to pull you.
And I think it fit him so well. That story fits him so well, not just the coaching staff having confidence and keeping confidence in him. But that was his mentality. Like, and that's what I think separates him from everybody. Like, his shooting obviously is as good as anybody to ever play the game, but you could only shoot that well if you have the right mentality. And there was a documentary, and I hadn't thought about it since he played, but once somebody who was a commentator in the documentary was that Steph would come down, miss a shot, and then get the ball back 3 seconds later and take a shot, and nobody questioned it. It doesn't happen. I actually saw Caitlin Clark do that the other day, and I was like, I remember seeing Steph Curry do that. Few people have the freedom to do that, but few people have the ability to not allow anybody to even question doing that. And if Steph
Yeah.
would have missed the second one, he would have taken the third, and we would have been just as excited that he got the ball out of his hands for a third three. Obviously, he displayed that mentality at a very young age. When his freshman year, he had the performance he had. Now, I don't think what's talked about maybe in that first game was he made like 2 plays in the final 2-3 minutes that ended up helping us come back and win that game. So he had his 13 turnovers, and he was somewhat efficient. I mean, I guess you're not efficient if you're turning the ball over 13 times, but he made play. He didn't dwell on them, and he ended up helping win the game in the final moments with. I think he made some free throws, but I think he made like 2 shots that next day against Michigan, he made that same shot 15 times and he didn't have those turnovers. So it's mental performance, sports performance. It's something that we help our players with and we work with our players on. And I don't know if he needs any help because he's extraordinary. He could probably teach a lot of people more than anybody can teach him.
It is awesome that the best shooter of all time comes from Davidson, North Carolina, or played at Davidson College. I mean, it's really remarkable. And I just got a few more questions, Coach, and I'll get you out of here. For the listeners, what is TCC? And is it mandatory to have that tattooed on you once you graduate from Davidson? Because it seemed like every former player has TCC, including Steph Curry, tattooed on their arm.
So TCC is trust, commitment, care, and it's been our motto at Davidson for a long time, and it's a lot more complex than just this. But we talked about it on Sunday night when we had our opening year team meeting. But you've got to trust, and you've got to be trusted at all times. It can't be one and not the other, and that's your teammates, that's your coaches, and that's on the court, that's off the court. Commitment, that is obviously work ethic, that is your attitude, and that's your willingness to do whatever is asked of you for the betterment of the team, not as an individual. And then care is how you do all those things with your behavior, and when things are good and when things are not good, being able to display that level of care for your teammates, for your program, for your coaches, and really Davidson College and the Davidson community. So that's a very short version of it, and we talked to our team about this, and we're gonna define all those other things that TCC means throughout this year. Steph Curry, he's got TCC tattooed right here on his wrist, and I think he was the first 1 or 2 or 3 guys that got that tattoo, and it's become a bit of a trend. I don't know if we have anybody on our team right now who has it. I was actually thinking about that when we spoke about it the other day, but it's something that our players and our coaches and those that have been members of this program carry with them and don't forget. And it's special to us, and it's on our walls. We hit the sign when we walk in and out of the locker room. But what allows it to be special and resonate is it doesn't change year to year. And I mentioned we had this opening team meeting, and I know other teams every year. What's our motto going to be? What's our theme? What are we going to have as our core values this year? And it doesn't change for us. And that's possible because we've had such stability and consistency here. Obviously, my father was the head coach here for so many years, but I was his assistant after being a player, as was Will Regal, as was Landry Kosmolsky, and now Jack Gibbs and Matt Williams and Matt Matheny. And when you have coaches on your staff who have lived it and helped maybe built it in one way or another, TCC isn't just words on a wall. It's a way that we've carried what we've learned on the basketball court and at Davidson and in this locker room into our everyday lives. And that's how we can make this more than just a motto or a mission statement. It's a way of life for us. And we hope every guy that we recruit here believes in that, but also they come through here and they leave here with the same experience that we had at Davidson, but learning the life lessons that are going to make them better fathers, better husbands, better professionals in whatever path they take, because of that trust, that commitment, that care that they learned at Davidson.
Yeah, I mean,
you just gave me like a pedestal to stand on and talk about our program. So thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I obviously I care a lot about this place, and it was such a part of who I am, being a player here, and then as assistant here in TCC, being a part of it though. So I could get going on it.
No, I know. I mean, that's why I teed you up for that, because when you talk, every team wants to establish culture. Every coach wants to establish culture, but Davidson's had culture for decades because of TCC, like the motto. And so I wanted you to have that platform to really dive in for people that don't know much about it.
Yeah, and it's being compromised so much right now, culture, because of the portal and because of NIL. And guys aren't making decisions for the same reasons they made decisions 4 or 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Some of them are, but not as many as they used to. And I get it. Like, there's such great opportunity, and you can't fault people for making the decisions they're making. But what it does is it really makes it difficult to build more than a roster. It makes it difficult to build a program or maintain a program.
Yeah.
And I think we've done our staff's done an incredible job putting together a roster of guys who are built for TCC, who are built to love being a part of this, not just because of the A10 or the Under Armour or the NIL, or they chose Davidson for all these reasons that make it special. And that's why I think we can be different.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I fully agree. And I have two last questions from close sources. One is, who would you prefer to win one-on-one in a game, the 2015 team or the 2022 team?
I'm sorry, win one-on-one, or if like the five guys?
Five guys. Sorry, it's one
game.
game. One game. 2015 team or 2022 team? Who would you pick?
So they were such different teams. Because the 2015 team, I mean, Peyton Aldridge was the 5-man, and you're talking about a 2,000-point scorer who could play point guard, but essentially was our 5-man. And Jordan Barham was our explosive, efficient 4-man, and then we had 3 like dead eye shooters at the 1, the 2, and the 3. Jack Gibbs being one of them. And 2022, we had Foster Lawyer, who was, like Pat Mahomes out there as a quarterback, as our point guard. And then you had 2 tough as nails, smart as could be, big, long wings, and Mike Jones and Youngjoon Lee. And then in the front court, we started Sam Menenga, who was really, really talented. And Luka Brajkovic was player of the year, but off the bench. And we had Grant Huffman coming off the bench as well. But Nelson Vociatum, who was like the ultimate glue guy. And we were really, really good when he was on the court. Almost our efficiencies improved. What I would say, I can't give you the answer that you're hoping to get in terms of like an actual answer. What was really cool is the 2015 team. Like, we tried some different things because we were small and we were in a new league. So we played 1-3-1 at times. We pressed at times. We changed our offense at times. And because we had to always be thinking ahead, but we had guys who were capable of doing it. And then we were just so talented from an offensive standpoint that we could outscore people and we could do it playing fast. In 2022, the only reason we had to change things is because we were so good that teams were like junking it up against us from like a box and 1 or a triangle and 2 or what we call now an eye and 3. And we just had to be a little smarter in those games. But I would say so as I say that, I think the 2022 team was better, but I think the overall, like maybe just from top to bottom, in terms of just the size and the sheer like talent. But the 2015 team, the 2015 team, like we could do some things that nobody else could do. We could play fast, and we would have been that 2015 team would have been a very difficult matchup for the 2022 team. Now the 2022 team, you had to double Luka Brajkovic, or you're going to get scored on.
Yeah.
That was a tough team to stop too.
That was obviously a question from down the hall. And the last question that I have for you, and I'll get you out of here, Coach, is I was told that you used to hype up, or you still do hype up your Super Bowl parties. What is a must food entree at a Coach McKillop Super Bowl party?
Man, that I haven't been teased about that in like 10 years. And I don't even know. Like, I think I borrowed the projector one year. Like, we watched film on the road. We had bring a projector with us. I think I borrowed it, and I was like, oh, I need it. We're having a Super Bowl party. And that spun out of control as every college locker room can. And then all of a sudden, every year people were making fun of me. Oh, you got the Super Bowl party this year. I don't know, like buffalo chicken dip, maybe. It's been a while since I've been made fun of for whatever comment I made in like 2013. But that's the consistency. That's the culture right there. I could still take the hits.
Yeah. Shout out to Matt Williams for that one. So that was a deep cut. But Coach, look, I appreciate you coming on, giving me 45 minutes of your time. Truly means a lot. And I hope to be out there very soon and watching you guys practice and play. And I'll be in Belk Arena.
Well, you're always welcome. It's always great having you in the gym. And thanks for talking hoops. I could do this forever.